She had worked tirelessly at her job for years, yet, the promotion she deserved never came, until one day, she finally heard a rumor from a colleague. Becky was ecstatic. All her hard work was finally paying off. Soon enough, she got the call. She was summoned to the boss's office. Her coworkers even had a promotion gift ready, a t-shirt that read, "I accept." She put it on and marched into the office, bursting with secret joy. But the moment she sat down, the boss dropped the bomb. It turned out the station had just hired a senior producer from a prestigious university, and to cut costs, they had to fire Becky and her no-name degree. Just like that, Becky walked out, fighting back tears. Her colleagues gathered to say goodbye, but Becky forced a smile to comfort them, saying it was just a minor setback. With her connection, she'd bounce back in no time. Becky broke the bad news to her mother, who sat her down for a serious reality check. Her mother's words left her deep in thought. She had always worked so hard, up before the sun every single day, rushing to the studio to prep. The show aired at 5 a.m. While her colleagues were still yawning, Becky was always full of passion. Her dream was to produce a successful TV show and become a top executive. For this, she had poured her life into her work, which meant her love life was a disaster. Every date was interrupted by phone calls, and they always ended in failure, leaving her completely single. But none of that dampened her enthusiasm. That night, she lay awake in bed. She knew her mom just worried about her, but after all these years, she was used to the grind. She wasn't ready to simply give up on her dream. So, the very next day, she buried herself in online applications, still targeting TV producer roles. But since she didn't have a degree from a top school, she hit a wall everywhere she turned. Then, one day, she finally got a call from IBS in New York, inviting her for an interview. Becky was ecstatic. She rushed home immediately and changed into her best professional outfit. But the show she was interviewing for was Notorious. Not only was it ranked dead last, with ratings consistently at the bottom, it had become a running joke in the industry. They had already burned through a dozen producers, with absolutely nothing to show for it. This time, having received Becky's barrage of resumes, they decided to take a desperate gamble. But when he actually looked at Becky's resume, he started having doubts. So Becky worked up the courage to fight for her chance. But his response crushed her confidence. She felt like she had completely blown it. So she stood up, thanked him, and left. Dejected, she walked out of the office. Inside the elevator, she bumped into her childhood idol, the legendary news anchor Mike Pomeroy. Excitedly, she expressed just how starstruck she was, but he just coldly muttered, "May I?" However, the man standing next to Mike simply told Becky, yes. His words left Becky confused, but she didn't dwell on it. After stepping out of the elevator, she tossed the interview pass straight into the trash. She thought there was no chance. However, just as she left the building, she got a call from them. He told Becky she got the job and could start on Monday. Hearing the news, Becky jumped for joy. She rented a small apartment in New York, packed her bag, and moved in immediately. It was a fresh start. Becky arrived at the station brimming with confidence. The security guard had seen it all before. Soon, a staff member came to collect her, but the moment she stepped into the studio, she was dumbfounded. The workplace was a chaotic mess. The equipment was practically ancient, and the oppressive atmosphere was suffocating. She realized that the job ahead wouldn't be as simple as she'd imagined, but she didn't let that get her down. Instead, she gladly embraced the mess. At the first staff meeting, everyone was bickering, raising their own complaints, trying to give this new young producer a hard time. One male anchor even showed up late and impatiently tried to walk out. Becky wasn't fazed by their attitude. She didn't put up with it at all. She accurately remembered every issue raised and offered professional solutions for each. Her commanding presence left everyone in the room stunned. What shocked them even more was that she immediately fired the morning show's lead male anchor, and this move earned her everyone's newfound respect. But then came a new problem. The morning news required a male and female duo, and now only the anchor specialized in entertainment news remained. With Colleen left, the urgent priority was to find a male anchor to fill the gap. Becky wanted to poach talent from big shows, but given the station's meager pay and the early morning hours, most anchors wouldn't stoop to take the job. This put her in a bind. Then, by chance, she saw her idol, Mike, on TV. She knew instantly he was the one. The next day, she pitched the idea to her boss. She learned from him that Mike only did serious hard news. As for the lighter, entertainment segments of a morning show, he wouldn't give them the time of day, even though the network paid him millions a year, since there had been no suitable news assignment stories for Mike, so he was basically getting paid to sit on the bench. But Becky wasn't about to give up. She was determined to get Mike on her show. She got a copy of his contract from the boss, and after studying it carefully, she found a loophole. She took the contract straight to Mike and pitched him her idea, but Mike didn't hesitate to shoot her down. Becky, however, didn't flinch. She had come prepared. She reminded Mike that per his contract, if he went 6 consecutive months without being on air while refusing a valid assignment, he would forfeit his $6 million buyout. She sincerely invited him to join the team. but Mike was furious. He had zero interest in a morning show that mixed real news with total nonsense. He believed journalism should be serious, unlike the chaotic circus of daybreak, where anything goes. He despised producers like Becky and her new media approach. He stormed out in a huff. Becky was still stressing over the anchor vacancy, while Colleen insisted he'd never stoop to doing this monkey show. But the words had barely left her mouth when Mike appeared in a suit, standing right in front of them. Becky rushed to welcome him. Just when she thought they were all set and ready to roll, a whole new set of problems popped up. Bubbly Colleen and stiff, conservative Mike were instantly at war. One thought entertainment news was beneath him. The other couldn't stand his arrogance. They clashed at every turn, leaving Becky caught in the middle. As for Mike's caustic temper, Becky got the full experience. Not only did he nitpick every aspect of the job, he mocked Becky for being a rookie. He hated the promo Becky shot, calling it hideous, and his chemistry with Colleen was a total disaster. Dealing with him was giving Becky a massive headache. Adam, who worked in the same building, heard that Becky had hired Mike and stopped by to offer his condolences. He'd worked with Mike for a year, so he knew exactly what Becky was going through. He took the chance to ask her out on a date. At the bar, Adam told Becky all sorts of funny stories from his time working with Mike. He was impressed she had the guts to hire him. Things moved fast between them. Just as things were starting to heat up, Adam suddenly asked Becky if Mike had been drinking that day. She suddenly remembered that earlier in the office, Mike had cracked open a bottle of whiskey. Adam warned her that whenever Mike had a big event the next day, or a major appearance, he'd get completely wasted the night before, and then call in sick the next morning. Becky panicked immediately. She rushed out, barely remembering to get dressed. Becky scoured every bar looking for Mike, but came up empty. Finally, she tracked him down at a restaurant. There was Mike. Becky knew he was definitely wasted. To ensure the premiere went ahead, she shoved Mike into a taxi. Becky spent the whole night guarding the living, terrified that Mike might try to sneak out. Eventually, she couldn't fight the exhaustion and dozed off. The next morning, it was Mike who woke her up. She glanced at the clock and realized they were running late. She scrambled to get her things together, desperate to get to the studio. Meanwhile, Mike casually started making breakfast. They ended up eating on the way to work. Finally, it was time for Mike's debut. To celebrate his arrival, Becky had planned an on-air surprise. She had Colleen present him with a welcome cake, but Mike was having none of it. He just launched straight into the news. He remained stone-faced the whole time, and even went off script during the live broadcast. He did things completely his own way, totally disregarding Becky's cues. This made his co-host Colleen furious, calling him a total jerk. The stressful day finally came to an end. Dejected, she went to her boyfriend's place to vent her frustration. Just then, her phone rang again. Adam decisively threw her phone into the fridge. He picked Becky up and carried her into the bedroom. However, when Adam woke up later, he found Becky still working in the middle of the night. She was scouring for the latest news story to prepare for the next morning show. Adam could only smile bitterly at this. Her boyfriend's support soothed Becky's anxiety, becoming her greatest comfort outside of work. However, the ratings for Daybreak didn't improve just because veteran anchor Mike had joined. Instead, they kept plummeting. Her boss found Becky in a rage and told her that the show would be canceled in 6 weeks, to be replaced by a game show or talk show, and Becky would be out of a job. Back at home, Becky wept alone. She had put so much effort into this show, only to end up with nothing. She felt a deep sense of defeat. Meanwhile, Mike was still doing whatever he wanted and refusing to cooperate. This finally pushed Becky over the edge. She stormed into the studio to find Mike and gave him a huge piece of her mind. Finally, the broadcast began, and the camera cut straight to Colleen. Not ready to give up, Becky went to her boss to fight for one last chance. Becky decided to give the show a major overhaul. She made the field reporter ride a roller coaster firsthand, filming the entire experience. Although the reporter was terrified, the audience absolutely loved it, and the video's views online quickly broke 100,000 views. To boost the rating, Becky racked her brain and came up with a bunch of novel ideas. She managed to get a rapper on the show, turning the live broadcast into a concert. She had the hosts get up close with animals and even kiss Frog, which nearly gave Mike a stroke. Becky kept introducing new themes for the show, injecting new life into the production team. Morale was higher than ever. Colleen loved trying new things and accepting new challenges, while Mike stuck to his gun, insisting on only doing serious news. Mike even mocked Colleen as a glorified janitor, which made Colleen furious. The two actually started bickering on air, and the whole scene went out live. Witnessing such a serious on-air disaster, Becky was devastated. She thought all her hard work had gone down the drain, but when the episode aired, it got an unexpectedly huge reaction. People loved watching the hosts tear into each other, and the ratings skyrocketed. Excited, she went to the boss to report the recent victory, but the boss coldly told her they were still short of the target. If they didn't hit the numbers in time, the show would still be axed. Becky felt instantly drained. Was this show show really going to end on her watch? Even on dates with her boyfriend, Becky couldn't stop talking about work. She expected him to understand, but received only sighs and sarcasm. This made Becky furious, and she stormed off. At the next morning's meeting, Mike unexpectedly volunteered, saying he had a new story idea: the annual sauerkraut festival, held up north. He wanted to report from the scene personally. Seeing this change in Mike, Becky could hardly believe her ears. Becky decided to join Mike for the live report. Sure enough, there was a catch. Mike was just using the pickle festival as a cover to hide the story he actually wanted to report. But the airtime for daybreak was fast approaching. Becky had no idea what game Mike was playing. Mike drove the car straight to the governor's mansion. He completely ignored Becky, who was nagging incessantly from the back seat. Pushed to her limit, Becky finally snapped at him. Mike paused for a moment after hearing her out, but he didn't respond. He walked right up and knocked on the governor's door. Becky could only tell the camera crew to get ready and wait to see what happened. Mike started asking the governor some very sensitive questions. Becky immediately realized that this was absolutely explosive news. She rushed to get the cameras rolling, and just like that, Daybreak broadcast an exclusive report on this breaking story. It turned out Mike had known all along that the governor was going to be arrested for a crime that morning. He hadn't dared to tell Becky beforehand, fearing the news would be leaked. And this was the story Mike had insisted on covering. Mike then confided in Becky. He admitted he used to be a workaholic too, because he had poured too much energy into his work. He had neglected his family. It caused conflicts with them, and they still hadn't forgiven him. This was the first time in a long while that the two of them had a calm, heart-to-heart talk. They returned to the station because Mike's segment was a huge hit. The ratings skyrocketed. They far exceeded the target set by the boss. Everyone cheered and applauded them. When Becky showed the numbers to the boss again, he had some shocking news for her. The country's most influential TV program, The Today Show, had made her a job offer. They were impressed by Becky's talent and offered her a job at The Today Show. Becky was thrilled. It was the job she'd always dreamed of, but she hesitated. Daybreak was finally getting back on track, and she was finally clicking with the team. She didn't want to just walk away. Becky was still weighing her options, but when she tried to talk to Mike about work, he went right back to his old ways. Mike's attitude completely disheartened her. She walked away without looking back. Becky was torn. The show was finally looking up, and the crew was finally motivated. She hated the thought of leaving, but Mike's coldness brought her back to reality, so she decided to accept the interview with The Today Show. When Colleen found out Mike drove Becky away, she really tore into him. Realizing she might leave, Mike panicked. He suddenly walked off the set and headed for the kitchen station. He started cooking live on air, something he swore he'd never do. Meanwhile, Becky's interview was going well, until she saw what was happening on TV. She couldn't believe her eyes. Then her boyfriend called. This was Mike's way of apologizing. He was showing her that he was finally willing to change. Realizing this, Becky ran out of the interview. She raced all the way back to the studio. When she finally got there, Mike saw she was back. They shared a knowing smile. In the end, Becky chose to stay with Daybreak. With her and Mike working together, the show was revitalized. Even her mom was proud of her. She didn't just advance her career, she also found true love. There's often more than one path to a dream. Find the right direction and keep moving forward. Maybe the road ahead is winding, and maybe it's different from what you envisioned, but as long as you keep the faith, I believe that one day, the sun will finally shine through.